The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the Weekend 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the Radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the Weekend Radio team.
I didn't think I was going to be able to get up this now.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. This is Barry Haichu, and this is Mike McAuliffe.
Hi there.
Usual hosts, and today we have a very, very special guest.
Hello.
Hi there. Our guest is Rowan Wilson, who is the plaintiff in a case that was filed in 2011 and was recently heard and decided upon at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And I see. How you doing today, Rowan?
Oh, your volume is much better. I'm doing well.
Good.
How are you?
I'm well also. And Rowan and I have known each other for a few years now. We were both involved with the Libertarian Party of Nevada at one point, and we have since moved on to other endeavors and other causes. But I do recall you talking about this, that what you planned to do at that time. And I have seen, I've read different news stories on this. I went onto the Cannabis website, read their news story about it, and saw the comments. And some of these people were saying, oh, what a fool this person was. Why would she tell a gun dealer that she had a medical marijuana card? And, I recall you saying that you had planned to do this, to push this issue because you wanted to prove that this restriction and this issue is not about pot at all, and that it's more about personal health, safety, and liberty. So take us back to when this first started, please.
Thank you. First, I'd like to clarify that bless their little hearts, all the different narratives and how few people, few supposedly journalists, few writers, authors, have contacted me. One would think that verifying a source would be primary these days, wouldn't one?
Well, not in today's news cycle, it seems.
So there have been all kinds of things made up, said, what have you. But this started with, I was lobbying at the Capitol. At the time, I was doing my pre-med requirements to attend osteopathic medical school, which I ultimately chose not to attend, and bumped into the ACLU in Nevada. And several of us were lobbying because, for those who are not from Nevada or have had medical cards in the state of Nevada, the law was in place for over 10 years without any provisions for patients to obtain medicine. How silly is that?
Very.
So that's where some of our conversation started, to put it in full context. Okay? Move on to meeting various different people at the Capitol, lobbying on behalf of patients, and I would show up in my medical scrubs. I was working, putting myself through, the rest of the pre-med studies at the time, and was also working as a med tech at the nursing home, or as I prefer to call the drug dealer at the nursing home, because really, those are the real drugs, right? With the third largest killer in the United States right now being prescription drugs and medical error, let's at least get out of the way that those are the real drugs, right?
Absolutely.
With the opioid epidemic out of hand, we're all familiar with what's happening with EpiPen, the cost spiraling out of control, yada, 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 yada. So, started talking with a group. How do we change things? My initial concern was, why is it anybody's business? And isn't it a violation of HIPAA law to ask what I'm doing to my body or what I'm not doing to my body? We could have incredible fines and fees as just a med tech at a nursing home to give out information to an unauthorized family member or anybody even standing around staring at the screen behind us without a screen protector who would even see the address, let alone what meds that patient's on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how in the world could, as we found out later, the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, ATF, which really sounds more like, three-acronym convenience store than...
But it is a federal bureaucracy.
Oh, yes, the federal bureaucracy, yes. Bless their little hearts. So they should have anything to dictate over, and they invented a group of questions to ask back in 2011. Are you addicted to or under the influence of ding, 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 ding. Of course, enumerating cannabis listed as marijuana, the old propaganda, the old Harry Anslinger term, because it's always been previously called, and the plant is known as cannabis, correct?
Correct.
So that also plays into the decision, which we are going through the process and will appeal if the next step of listening to, presenting to X amount of judges, the writ of certiorari, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, I'm not up on my legal jargon, as my dad would say, to petition the Supreme Court. One of the things that was not taken into full countenance in the decision was the historical nature of activism. Oh my goodness gracious, don't we know that Harry Anslinger and that Nixon tried to squelch political activism of any form, with the drug war, now didn't they?
Well, let me put just a little bit of historical perspective for our listeners here. You're absolutely correct in talking about Harry Anslinger, and in fact, what the federal government did in the late 30s in the outright ban of marijuana was eventually ruled unconstitutional in that you had to have a tax stamp before you could grow or possess marijuana, but in applying for the tax stamp, you had to have the marijuana, which would put you in legal jeopardy. And so that was in the 1960s overruled by the Supreme Court. And in 1968, the year that Nixon was elected, Congress passed a federal gun control act. And one of the things that they said in that act was that users of various substances, including marijuana, were prohibited from having firearms. And so that kind of set the ground for it. And then where I broke into you there was roughly where Nixon had launched the war on drugs in 1972 following the passage of the Uniform Controlled Substances Act in 1971. So there's a long history of the federal government really sticking their nose into these issues, seeing it as a criminal justice abuse issue as opposed to personal health issues.
Yes, versus personal health issue. But you and I, having been libertarians, choosing to identify still or not, the intrusion of government into how many different places? We've lost count. But,
most notably, your body in the bedroom.
Yes. But to go back and answer your question in another succinct way, this case and several others across the nation, similarly, not always structured. This parallels the early birth control cases. Griswold v. Connecticut, going up to Roe v. Wade, which some say was not the best case, nor necessarily, depending on your opinion, how it was decided, but it's still, we don't have bodily autonomy in this country, now do we?
Not as much as we think.
Not at all. If I were to, heaven forbid, come down with cancer tomorrow, depending on what state I'm in and who would be paying for my treatments, be it Medicare, Medicaid, or what have you, I would have to fight for my chosen treatment other than cut, poison, burn, surgery, chemotherapy, radiation.
Right.
Why should the government have anything to do with that at all?
Because some people would say they're paying for it, but in fact, the choices that they do pay for there are typically much more expensive than alternatives we could look at. Precisely.
Let alone birth control, let alone the cost of bringing another human being into the world. And again, the parallels of, and aren't we still fighting birth control, which abortion is not in my mind? Aren't we still fighting the birth control fights today in how many different states? So it's directly comparable.
Absolutely.
It's directly comparable.
So, you also mentioned that that in this case about having weapons for personal safety. Here in Nevada, there's a part of the law that's NRS 202.360, which is unauthorized person in possession of a firearm, and it says that anyone who's addicted to a substance is therefore banned from having a firearm. And law enforcement in here in southern Nevada, at least, and I imagine up there in northern Nevada when you were living there, has taken the view that if you are a medical marijuana patient, you are addicted to marijuana. Whether you're using it once a week, once a day, once a month, it doesn't matter. They consider you to be addicted, and they have used this on a local level as a method of not really preventing people from having firearms so much as charging them with this violation once they catch them with their marijuana. So it's a difficult situation. And then you, as I recall, went to challenge this situation by having a card, whether you were using it or not, and I think you were not, and you were just trying to make a point, and then trying to go and purchase a firearm here in the state.
Yes, and for full disclosure, I do maintain a residence in northern Nevada still to this day. That payment every month.
Yep.
I do more than think about but make. And I find this absolutely hilarious in the sense that, the right hand of the government doesn't know what the left hand is doing, because after I was turned down for this purchase by not selecting to answer the question, I left that blank. Mm-hmm. I left that blank on the form. Okay, political activism, freedom of the First Amendment of free speech. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we can take all the vitamins and herbs and things that are prohibited now by the U.S. FDA, but you can get out of Canada, Yep. You can get out of Europe, by calling it free speech? Wouldn't that be interesting? So by choosing to do that, going back, later I obtained my concealed carry weapon permit in Nevada. I renewed it. And also obtained it in Utah, which has reciprocity in 30 states. Mm-hmm. So the government's still trying to say, wait a minute, you're a dangerous criminal by doing or not doing some kind of substance, yet it's a much longer background check to get a concealed carry weapon permit in 30 states. My goodness gracious, how hypocritical. And the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
And how unsurprising. But if they did, I think our liberties would be further eroded than they already are.
And on a different note, I've had no problems getting my hunting tags or any of those waterfowl migrant bird stamps or any of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? They've never denied me and said, we know you're a medical marijuana patient, but yet you're going to go march off into the woods with your guns. They don't seem to mind taking my money for that. But yeah, when I also went to renew my concealed weapons permit after I got denied for the purchase of a firearm myself, they denied me my renewal on my concealed weapons permit eventually, which is why I took such a close interest in your case. I have kind of a question on topic with that. I was wondering whether, since the Ninth Circuit in its infinite wisdom chose to deny us our constitutional rights, whether you were planning on appealing this to the United States Supreme Court, or whether your lawyer thinks you might have a chance of having it heard, because they're kind of fickle. They can either choose to or not choose to hear it, regardless of your passion for the topic. So, what do you feel that your chances are in actually getting it heard?
If I may interject at the beginning of the conversation, I stated our next step is to go before another panel. I want to say it's en banc, but that's not the proper legal term, to appeal in that route. And then if it is turned down from there, then we petition the Supreme Court. And that, frankly, has been the plan all along. And there was, how do we see this through? How do we see this through?
And this was a three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit. So first, what you're doing is you're appealing into the full Ninth Circuit before proceeding with cert and with the Supreme Court. And it's not only a case of do they want to hear this or not, because they do get to pick and choose. But the Supreme Court these days gets over 5,000 petitions every year for cases to be heard, and they only give cert to less than 100. And the number of cases that the Supreme Court has been hearing has been steadily trending down over the decades. And so even if you have a good case, that doesn't mean the Supreme Court is going to take it. But before we even got to the Supreme Court, did you file? Was this case heard locally in Nevada?
Yes, back in 2012. In fact, that was the last time that I was in Nevada and appeared in court in December of 2012. And the judge dismissed it. You can go back and read all of that on the internet, as well as the source documents against source documents. So it was dismissed at that time, citing a legitimate violent drug dealer. I forget what the particular case was. So it was not Judge Navarro, I believe her name was. How in the world it was applied to my case, I don't know. I sincerely hope that this goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, but I pray every night, Mike, for the freedom of patients and people. Why should we have to ask permission to have control over our health care?
It's so nice to hear that you were directly correlated to a violent drug dealer in her deposition. That must have felt made you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, being a law-abiding citizen there. But besides that, I noticed that in their decision, the 3-0 decision by this panel, it was stated that the drugs can, quote, raise the risk of irrational or unpredictable behavior, which gun use should not be associated, which of course is complete nonsense. I don't even know where these people kind of get some of these ideas. It doesn't seem as though there was much science or thought process put into the decision, and that their pre-existing, I guess I would call it mania, kind of took hold with the language that was used in their decision. My other main gripe with this is that they said that, it's federally illegal. Everyone always says that it's federally illegal, but how can medical cannabis be so federally illegal when our same United States government currently still operates a medical cannabis distribution program to a very select few patients? That was a result of a Supreme Court case back in the 70s, I believe, late 70s. And it's just the hip hop, they hold a patent on the plant. People are starting to toss that around more in social media circles. But really, it's been, I don't want to say common knowledge, but it's been public knowledge for decades about this. And so when these federal judges throw this in people's faces, it seems that they're just willingly and almost maliciously ignoring their own government's findings on
but
this.
Maliciously, there we are, going back to part of the decision of this case, if I may interject.
Please.
Political activism. We want to squelch. They want to squelch any and all political activism and free speech. Now, don't they?
Yes.
How many historical precedents do we have for that?
Plenty. And my own, in my own personal existence.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
yes.
I was there when it happened.
Yeah.
Almost got caught. I almost got arrested myself that day.
So yes, we agree with you that they do try to tamp down on the dissent as much as they possibly can. So we need to take a real quick break here, Rowan. For a commercial break. We'll be right back and talk a little bit more about this.
Thank you.
Nevada Pure is a premier, vertically integrated medical marijuana enterprise which offers top-quality medical marijuana, great customer service, and a safe, private environment. We carry a wide selection of medical cannabis strains. Our knowledgeable staff will assist you in finding the correct strain for your condition. Our trained professional staff can educate you on various strains for your condition, methods of consumption, responsible cannabis use, and the wellness benefits of cannabis. We aim to help patients achieve a better quality of life. Medical marijuana is a medicine, not an intoxicant. It's about a patient's well-being at Nevada Pure. From the moment you make an appointment with us, your care, health, and well-being is our priority. Nevada Pure is located at 4360 Boulder Highway, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out their entire menu at WWW.NevadaPure.com.
Attention medical marijuana patients. Did you know that your medicine could contain pesticides, heavy metals, and even mold? Are you really sure that you're getting the same potency every single time? Well, the answer to that question is simple. DigiPath Labs. DigiPath Labs is a state-approved laboratory run by scientists. So look for the DigiPath Labs quality seal on your next medicine and on the door of your favorite dispensary. To learn more, go to digipathlabs.com. That's DIGIPATH labs.com.
And welcome back to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour with our special guest today, Rowan Wilson, who's discussing the recent Ninth Circuit decision which limits our rights. I don't want to say our sovereign rights, but limits our human rights, really, to both treat our illnesses and defend ourselves. So, Rowan, where do you see this case going in a broader sense? And I don't. We know that you're going to appeal to the full Ninth Circuit and then to the Supreme Court if necessary. Your attorney, Chaz Rainey, has said that if the court does this, it's kind of like a camel's nose under the tent, and if they can stop one brand of medicine users from obtaining guns, that they could extend that into people who are taking Lortabs or hydrocodones or Xanax or
whatever the
this
hell
and
they
that,
want.
and then take that to alcohol, and obviously that is not in the ruling anywhere. But if you have activist versus original judges, and you have the Ninth Circuit being the most liberal leaning in the country, do you see a danger that they could use this ruling to further limit gun ownership in the country?
I think they're going to use it to limit all kinds of things. My hope and my daily thought process doing this is the hope that, however, be it this case, be it other cases, again, we go back to absolute freedom for patients and people. I should be able to have full bodily autonomy. Any parent, any person should be able to choose what they wish to put in their body for medical treatment, preferably, for health and wellness benefits, preferably, or other. I should not have to order, as I have for years, vitamins and minerals to benefit my body out of Canada through Europe, because the FDA is limiting what we are able to obtain. And gentlemen, perhaps you remember or you don't, that a few years ago, Diamond Foods received a letter from the FDA. Please verify this as well out there. It's a public document. The FDA tried to say that walnuts are a drug. Oh my gosh, we have to limit walnuts. And there was public outcry, and it was squelched. So how do we bring about a conversation to look at the bigger picture? And they see the money in this. Here, standing in Washington State today, the last time I looked at the Liquor and Control Board weekly marijuana numbers, as they call it, we were up to $4.2 million a day in sales. How much tax is that? They've essentially thrown the patients under the bus here by closing all the dispensaries, and then, sales at the recreational shops where you can't obtain proper tested, pesticide-free medicine, let alone unadulterated oil, largely.
And that actually,
tax-free.
Rowan, that actually ties into another article that I have here about Colorado marijuana sales in general. The figures topped $122 million just in the month of July. That's a 27% increase from the year before. And you're absolutely right to point out tax revenues and how much that can be used for school systems, for substance abuse treatment programs, and any other number of needs that we the people legitimately have.
It seems as though the government can move as fast as it wants to when it wants to. We've been fighting this battle to very slowly unwind what happened. I'm not exactly sure how long it took for that plan to kind of illegalize marijuana back in the 20s or 30s to kind of materialize, but we've been trying to undo that damage for the past 70, 80 years now, and forcefully for the last 45, maybe 50. We've made very limited progress on a federal level, yet I saw on CNN recently that this drug that they're selling at smoke shops and at the champ shows called Kratom, has all of a sudden, overnight, with the snap of a finger, become a Schedule I drug. Mm-hmm. When it was just unregulated all of a sudden it's this huge public, problem. And, I always thought that spice was pretty dangerous because it seems like the effects were pretty obvious. The news is reporting these deaths and things like that. But I had never really heard that this kratom or whatever you call it, I had never really heard anything about it. Oh, yeah, it'll do this and that for you. But I never heard that it was causing mass death or causing emergency room visits or something like that, or anything that would potentially necessitate a Schedule 1 designation all of a sudden. But here we are, and here it is.
Well, it becomes an enforcement
but if I may offer, let's
Please.
also tie this back historically to what I was doing post MBA and towards my osteopathic medical school prep. The American Medical Association took over in the 1930s, and not that there were all angels operating in what was then the naturopathic homeopathic movement or the osteopathic movement.
Or the snake oil movement.
Right.
Oh, yeah. But it is when, essentially, they started regulating any and all of the natural treatments that had been used for hundreds of years in this country, thousands of years across the world. When I was singing, my first career was opera, and I was singing in Austria, and you had to go see a physician, we would sit down and have a one-on-one conversation, and I would be treated with herbs, vitamins, and tinctures, commonly by an MD. We don't have that in this country now, going back to the 1930s. So you see the patterns again. It's not just regulating putting something new in a Schedule 1 drug. And it's not going to change when marijuana is probably likely, cannabis is put in a Schedule 2 or below. It goes to control now, doesn't it? It goes to control. Therefore, back to the bodily autonomy argument. We should be able to do whatever we want, health and wellness-wise, medical treatment-wise, with our bodies. Again,
Well, that's the old libertarian line that we should be able to do what we want with our bodies, but my right to do what I want with my fist ends an inch away from your nose. And so as long as I am not affecting you and impacting you in a negative fashion, yes, we should all have complete domain over our bodies, our lives.
So if we don't have control of that, what do we have control of, for Christ's sake?
Yeah, we're slaves.
But still, you were saying, we don't have doctors that treat with tinctures anymore, but I've noticed in the past maybe 2 or 3 years the reemergence of what's called naturopaths that are kind of like natural holistic based doctors that are pretty well educated, most of them I've met, and are trying to kind of refocus their practice on, just living a healthier lifestyle and kind of being a better steward of the earth and things like that.
It's much more than that.
Rather than kind of taking all those drugs, and things like that. But my cousin recommended that I go to one for a vertigo problem I had, and the doctor was able to guide me very, very quickly and give me some basic lifestyle changes without giving me any without any prescription medicine. Just give me some basic health advice, just like, look, this is what you need to do to get your stuff together, and the results have been quite dramatic.
Which is what your doctor should be doing. You were going to expand on that, Rowan?
Sorry.
Yes, the prerequisites, thank you for mentioning that. Naturopaths are wonderful. The same prerequisites, in case you didn't know, for naturopathic medical school are the same as for osteopathy or a regular medical doctor.
I was not aware.
Okay, same. Some of these same studies at medical school for DO, osteopathy, ND, naturopathy, and MD are similar. The structure of the body, you can compare across the board, again, easily Google on the internet, see what the actual courses are. We've had for hundreds of years treatments that are naturopathic rather than, again, back to the 1930s, AMA, less than 12% of all physicians belong to the American Medical Association, throw us under the bus saying, you can't take apple cider vinegar 3 times a day to cure your stomach acid or treat it. You need to take this pill. Allopathic medicine came in and took over. We've had 70 years of allopathic medicine. And it works really well for acute care. If I'm bleeding on the side of the road, take me into the hospital, stitch me up, give me some drugs. But if I come down with a chronic problem, wouldn't you agree that there are a number of people taking cannabis with chronic problems?
Of course.
Absolutely, not even as a pun, but seriously, that's funny you had mentioned stomach acid. I had a serious stomach acid problem. I was taking over-the-counter medicines, Prevacid for it, and was able to cure it with homeopathic remedies just by changing my diet over the course of a few months. But I kind of want to shift focus on something. Sorry to kind of jump around, but I was reading on the National Rifle Association's Facebook page. They were covering your story. I mean, your story about this federal ban on marijuana cardholders has, of course, gone national. There's been a lot of coverage over it, but like you said, unfortunately, none of them seem to quote you directly. So I was reading the article on CNN, and they were talking.
Thank you for mentioning all this. Yes.
Not CNN, on the National Rifle Association website. I'm sorry, and they were just kind of covering it very broadly. And I commented, and I'm just like, I wonder why they haven't really weighed in directly on it. They just kind of copied and pasted like an Associated Press article about it. They didn't have their own journalists go through and kind of give their view of what they thought about it. And I commented under it. I'm like, why doesn't your organization take a stance on these constitutional rights that are being taken away from a disproportionately large amount of law-abiding citizens? And these people, I couldn't believe for such a libertarian page how statist the responses were.
Oh, yeah.
They were just like, oh, well, it's federally illegal, so that's that, and shut you down, and you dopers, that's it. And I'm just like, wait a minute, like, isn't the purpose of this page to protect rights and kind of come together and work through these issues and try to work on ways to change the law, not just bend over? Oh, the government says bend over, so let's bend over. That doesn't sound very NRA to me.
As far back as this 1968 Gun Control Act, the NRA was supporting the prevention of drug users, marijuana users, from obtaining weapons.
But the perception is so different now, and even on the Republican side, there's so many people that are afraid to come out of the cannabis closet because of it's perceived as you're a bad person or you're not a real Republican or whatever. Which of course a lot of the more conservative people are affiliated with the National Rifle Association. So I'm just trying to figure out how to get more of the national powerhouse of gun rights into this very, very critical issue, because like you were saying, Mike, if you allow them to kind of crack this door or put the camel's nose under the tent, as you said, where does this stop? And why aren't these people who are supposedly here to protect our gun rights so willingly ignoring this potential serious erosion or potential erosion of our rights? Is it purely a conservative versus liberal thing?
Well, let me ask you about a twist on that, Rowan. When you got involved in this, because you're talking about our rights over our bodies, our rights to take the medicines or herbal cures that will help us, but at the same time, I know you feel very strong about the Constitution, the whole Constitution, and your Second Amendment rights of obtaining firearms. How much of your getting into this fight was a result of that? And what are your views on not only what we take internally, but what we can do to protect ourselves and families?
Oh, I'll challenge succinct. Number one, going back a bit to the other gentleman's statement, the NRA has bargained away our rights for years. I have not renewed my NRA membership for years. GOA is a much Gun Owners of America, and Jews for the Preservation of Firearms. Hello, if we would have had firearms, hello, we Jews, would there be a lot more of us still in Europe today? But I digress. Yeah. I was not a gun owner and a gun fan until I lived in Oakland, in a very nice section of town on Lake Merritt, next to the multi-million-dollar high-rises in an older apartment building. And there was a serious hard drug dealer on the first floor. We kept reporting. We kept trying to, you'd hear knocks on the door and all kinds of screaming on the common entranceway at all hours. And that they seemingly didn't care until the day there was gunfire, was working from home. Boy, they came. And I decided I needed to, have something to be able to protect myself in the crazy state of Californistan, as we now call it.
And when you're saying they came, you mean the police?
The police.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they came and got him and found all kinds of things on him. Couldn't evict him for a year because of the laws of Oakland and what have you. But it was, hey, this is me, alone, on a weekday, working from home. And I'm hearing boom, 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 boom. Oh, my gosh, what's going on? I need to protect myself. My knife, my mace, the rest is not going to protect me. So fast forward to 2011, living in northern Nevada, trying to open a cannabis dispensary a mile and a half from the bunny ranch in Dayton, Nevada. And who is my second trip to six figures and back was in real estate. So I met, was stopping in boots on the ground, this little vacant space in a nice strip mall, which had, according to NDOT, something like 32,000 people coming by in a week. Great traffic! Right on the turnoff of Virginia City. Well, who owned the building? Fred at Fred's Custom Firearms. We shared a wall. That's who I tried to buy the gun from. So that's why I was known and left the checkbox blank. And this is all in the deposition. Again, if people were to look at source material, it's all out there. It's all out there. Go back to the source documents.
And to do that,
2011.
let me just ask, Rowan, to do that, what case would they look up? What's the actual name of the case?
It started as Wilson v. Holder. It was because Eric Holder was then the Attorney General.
Yeah.
Now it is Wilson v. Lynch, refiled.
Okay.
So I believe if you go into Juicy and I, not compensated, and I haven't looked at any of the original. It's been 5 years, but it's all there.
This must have been wildly expensive for you to pursue all the way through to the Supreme Court like this. You've taken it upon yourself to
to the circuit court at this point.
Yeah, to really, I have to applaud you for this. I want to call it a case of philanthropy.
God bless the ACLU of Northern Nevada. And boy, if anybody wants to get in conspiracy theories and, Jews, hey, if really there were a Jewish banking conspiracy, hey, where's our checks? Where's our checks? Chaz Rainey and Rainey could certainly use it right now in his firm. Go donate.
Yeah, it was a pro bono case that he...
That's amazing. What an amazing work of philanthropy by both of you. Thank you both for standing up so publicly for our rights. So few people are willing to really put their money where their mouth is, or put the time where their mouth is, because they always say the most important thing you can give someone is your time, and you certainly, both of you, have taken enough of it out of your own lives to pursue this at great risk to yourself, so thank you.
Well, and Michael and yourself, what are we if we are not to stand up? What is the quote by Thomas Jefferson, that we must be ever vigilant? Liberty requires ever vigilance?
Yeah, well...
That's very true. I want to get back to a point that you were making earlier when we were talking about the AMA and the allopathic model, since you have training and experience in this area. Certainly, we're all aware of Eastern medicine, specifically in this case, Chinese medicine, which has been practiced for the better part of 5,000 years, and yet the AMA thinks that Chinese herbal treatments, acupuncture, and the like are boogeyman science, and that this whole huge body of work, which predates Western civilization, is just that's not worth paying attention to.
If that's such nonsense, then why is the placebo argument so commonly administered in Western medicine, purposely giving people nothing and hoping that they have results in order to use your mind to if that isn't using Eastern style,
well, they're doing it to test the
least.
efficacy of drugs in a case where they're doing studies.
Well, sure, sure, we could say that, but I don't understand why it can't be both. Why does it have to be such one or the other?
Well, that's a good question. What do you think, Rowan? Why?
Gentlemen, profit motive in big pharma.
That's what I was thinking.
There you go. Yeah.
How let's paint it plain.
Yeah.
Not that all drugs are bad, all prescription drugs are bad. No, we still have aspirin, we still have various different things that, again, but much better for acute care than chronic long-term care. And as I still say to people who ask me for health advice, it's, hey, nothing is going to work. Cannabis oil to vitamin C drip to get rid of your cancer if you're still sitting on your butt and you're eating crap, right? There's no magic pill. My mother's wanted to take a magic pill and be a size 6 for years. Doesn't work that way. It's one part of the picture. So having, a healthy lifestyle, exercising the body, not necessarily vigorously, but even walking around the block, having a healthy outlook, and then putting it with natural oils
If I can,
with natural treatments.
if I can say what you just said, I think in somewhat different words, and considering that the pharmaceutical lobby is the largest lobbying group in Congress, and they also have quite a pull in state legislatures, the pharmaceutical industry does not profit from having a nation full of healthy people. The pharmaceutical industry makes their money from having people treated with chronic conditions and coming up with new conditions all the time and saying, oh, you got to try this, you got to try that. And if we were all healthy and we all ate right and exercised, okay, that may be a little pipe dream, but if we were a healthier nation, that would be not to the benefit of the pharmaceutical industry.
The indoctrination starts at youth when they give kids that have outrageous amounts of sugar in their diet ADHD pills because they don't even look at, you know what I mean? Not once when I was growing up did any of the doctors who were screening any of the kids in my class for ADHD say, okay, well, what are you feeding your son or daughter in the morning before they come to school? What does your diet consist of? What is their physical activity level? All they do is go, well, he's got problems at school, give him Ritalin. And then when you grow up, taking these drugs doesn't really seem like a big deal because you've been broken into that from youth. So it is what it is. And we even here in Nevada have struggled with big pharma kind of sticking their nose in the marijuana legalization movement. They were fortunately unsuccessful in killing our 2013 Senate Bill 374 for the medical dispensary legalization passage. But hell, they sure gave it the old college try.
They tried. We beat them by only one vote, and that was by Michelle Fiore crossing lines and voting with the majority.
And Peggy coming off of her deathbed.
Peggy Pierce coming off of her deathbed to vote for it as well. Let me ask you about something else, Rowan, that's directly tied to what we're talking about right now. According to campaign finance reports posted online by the Arizona Secretary of State's office, the fentanyl manufacturer Incest Therapeutics has donated $500,000 to the foes of their Prop 205 marijuana legalization effort. How surprised are you that Big Pharma is
not at all? Not at all, given how the patients in the state of Washington have been thrown under their bus. Ann Rivers, one of the state senators up here who's up for re-election, has received, and this is all in open secrets, it's all viewable online, Merck and the other big drug companies. Merck, in the last, I believe, when I looked it up, 3 to 5 years, has spent $40 million in political donations. Senator Rivers authored what a name, the Patient Protection Act.
Usually when they do those things, it means exactly the opposite of what they mean.
Precisely. So at what point do we reach an outcry in this country that people cannot afford the drugs? They cannot afford their premiums. They cannot afford the pills. They don't want to be taking the pills when they're fed up and they've had enough.
And also, you're talking about paying premiums. There's roughly every 30 seconds, there's a health-related bankruptcy in the United States. It is by far the largest cause of personal bankruptcy in the United States.
That's horrible. That's something I will get behind when Obama was trying to push Obamacare. Right at first, he came out with the speech, and I think it's been kind of a mess the way it's been rolled out. But he gave the speech and he said, "No one should go bankrupt from getting sick in the greatest country in the world." And I said, you're damn right no one should go be bankrupt. It hasn't exactly worked out that way. We're still kind of chewing through it. But, damn it, he had a point there. And that is just absolutely criminal to have people going broke after working their whole lives because of an illness that was not their fault. Some people have diseases that they acquired by, you get cirrhosis of the liver because you drank too much or something. But some people just wake up one day and have a brain tumor and you get screwed. How the hell do you, deny them?
I had to have a quad bypass because I chose the wrong parents.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hereditarily, I have high cholesterol levels. These have. Rowan, I know we're keeping you longer than we had planned. Can you stick around with us for a couple more minutes and we wrap up? We're going to go to a break and love to talk to you a little bit more.
Thank you. I am able to do that. Thank you, gentlemen.
That's great, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Armin Yamanijan, CEO of Essence Dispensaries, and I'd like to let you know a little bit about our company. As a completely complimentary service, our on-site nurse is here to meet with any patient or non-patient to discuss dosing and best practices. We have 3 convenient locations. We have one location on Tropicana between Decatur and Jones, which is our west side location. Our Henderson location is on the corner of Sunset and Green Valley Parkway, and we're proud to announce that we have the first and only dispensary on the Las Vegas Strip, on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Sahara. Our prices are the lowest prices in town and the highest quality medicine. Please come and see us at one of our 3 convenient locations or visit us at essencevegas.com. You can also call us at 702-978-7575. Once again, the number is 702-978-7575.
Getting Legal offers an informative and simple way for you to get your marijuana card. Why come to Getting Legal to get your marijuana card? We have a 99% approval rating and the lowest price in town. Avoid legal problems. Getting Legal can get you legal fast. Ready for a new start? Come in now and get relief from your chronic conditions affecting your quality of life. Call Getting Legal today at 702-979-9999. That's 702-979-9999. Or visit our website at gettinglegal.com to get your marijuana card today.
And we're back with the Weekend 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with our special guest, S. Rowan Wilson, who is the plaintiff in a case which sounds like it's going to go to the Supreme Court. So how is this protracted struggle, and it goes on for years, but it seems it goes on in little spurts here and there. How has this affected you personally, Rowan?
Recently, in the last 2 weeks, because of all of the press, I have been shocked at the few, again, as earlier in the conversation, few journalists, writers, what have you, that have contacted me. Mm-hmm. I have, and, through MaryJanesWorld.com and various other things, I can be found. Mm-hmm. So that's been shocking. It's been a lesson in press. But life still goes on. I work startup and am back at a day job, mm-hmm. and being able to dart out of the office and take a phone call. But I'm also in a legal state. My concerns truly are more for the people who've had to move out of Washington into Oregon, mm-hmm. to be able to grow plants, more than 4.
Well, because you were talking about the Patient Protection Act, and we kind of cut you at that. So how is that affecting people up there?
They're moving. They're moving.
And what is the heart of the act? Children.
The heart of the act was attempting to combine very poorly, the medical system with the recreational system. Oregon probably has the best example of the two. I'm not as familiar with Alaska. I haven't been to Alaska in several years. And Colorado is probably the second best example. As legalization happens, as medical cannabis happens in other states in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to have 50 different little laboratories of how this is to be done. Washington is not a model to follow. Not at all. Patients now can only, because of this Protection Act, and we know the Liquor Control Board is incredibly, we've asked for public records and people have sued them and have not been able to, with out-of-court settlements, they've not been able to speak about what they found of the behind-the-door closed meetings, with payoffs, of, felons getting, outright criminals, violent criminals, not cannabis criminals, mm-hmm. getting licenses. So patients are moving out of state because now they're only allowed to grow 4 plants. They must go on an incredibly onerous registry, again, back to HIPAA compliance.
And it
really
goes back
ridiculous.
to the rights of real property owners, which was the basis of the American Revolution and the basis of the Constitution, to protect the rights of property owners. And so
it's the illusion of ownership in this country. You never really own property.
Yeah.
I own my property. I don't really own it. If I don't pay my sewer bill for 3 months, there's a lien on my goddamn house, mm-hmm. which I recently discovered.
Ouch.
It's just
pay it before they auction it off.
You clear it up, but still, it's just like you go through and you're like, wow, I got this paid off house, and this is it. I got it made, and nope. You got to pay your property tax. Got to pay this. Got to pay that. And so, of course, you go searching for these things. Well, at least I don't have a homeowners association or something like that, and you try to justify it in your mind the best you can. But it is agitating, to put it mildly.
Well, in the 1930s, some of the first revolts were property tax revolts, people not paying them.
I don't even
So
believe that I own mineral rights, or I know we don't have water rights.
Don't have air rights. Don't have mineral rights in most of Nevada. Yeah. So I'm sorry, you were saying going back to the 1930s and the tax revolts?
Oh, yes, the tax revolts after the 1929 Great Crash. People decided to not pay their property taxes to force the government into doing various different things. In fact, to my overall question, gentlemen, how does this change with cannabis? At what point is the tipping point for health in the United States? At what point is the tipping point for cannabis? This case is but one of many citizen activists. It's so much bigger than simply, we're pushing back against EpiPen and these opioid epidemic. We're talking about bodily autonomy. Again, when do we hit this tipping point? I don't know.
I think you've got a good point there in the tipping point and all these other factors that you're mentioning. But it becomes, as we talk about these things and as we make these fights, it becomes less and less about cannabis and more about personal liberty.
Precisely.
So it's just it's something that that I don't see being fixed in my lifetime. And we've been striving for over 200 years to create a more perfect union, and unfortunately it seems we have gone seriously astray. And I'm going to go to the ruling of Citizens United when the Supreme Court is saying that corporations are people and they have all the exact same rights as people. I just don't buy it, and I think that's another major point that works against the actual living people in the United States. So just my 2 cents on that. So anyway, Rowan, I want to thank you so much for taking this time with us out of your busy working day. I'm glad that we have gone to the source on this, and I think that the fight you're fighting is so important, and it's not just for people who smoke pot, and it's not just for patients, but as I'm just saying, it's for all of us. These are
really
about
is.
the liberties and the rights that we have. And Rowan, I gotta salute you for this, because not a whole lot of people would actually have the gumption to stand up and make this kind of fight.
Well, no one has until you.
Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you for contacting me and for contacting Jazz and for verifying source material. You do. We're all in this fight together. Not entirely a populist thing, but when we all reach and we push this tipping point, we push this tipping point. And hasn't that been how things have historically changed in this country, let alone around the world?
And the failure to achieve that motivation, that to fight back when things are being tipped in the other direction. You were mentioning just a little bit earlier that had the Jews had more guns in Europe in the 1930s, the results would have been different. And what happened there was a population who, as bad as things were and getting steadily worse, they couldn't believe that it could possibly get any worse, or that it could possibly get any more authoritarian, and so they largely did nothing, and sadly found out that it can get a lot worse. And so
but we saw it coming for a long time, as we have in this country. My Jewish relatives of the Ashkenazi Europeans started leaving in the 1880s and came over to the United States. So, what do we see happening, and how many people are renouncing their citizenship out of the USA now?
But where do we run to?
Yeah, because we're seeing the very dangerous rise of racist and nationalist movements who are having a newfound legitimacy, they claim, in the political process these days, and it's just a scary thing to watch. And if we don't learn from history,
stand up and push back.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We're doomed to repeat it.
Within peaceful means.
Well, of course.
Peaceful means.
We're not talking about Second Amendment remedies. Yeah.
We're the great democratic
experiment
example, aren't we? Yes, experiment, precisely.
Okay, well, we're about out of time. So, Rowan, once again, thank you so much for visiting with us for this past hour. And wow, it is such important work you're doing. So we hope to check in with you on the next stage of this process, and hopefully it's going to be victorious.
Thank you, gentlemen. Enjoy your time. and keep spreading the good word.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. And
Bye-bye.
that's just about wrapping it up for the Weekend 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour this week. We thank our special guest, Rowan Wilson, not only for speaking with us today, but for being an activist for patient rights and for American rights.
Absolutely. It's our civic duty to attempt to undo bad laws as we see fit and attempt to make the positive change for the rest of our citizenry.
And we have pages of news that we didn't get to because we wanted to talk about these very important issues. And join us again next week. We'll give you the latest news, what's going on, and maybe what you can do to fight for our rights as we get closer to the November election.
Right, remember, register to vote before October 8th.
Absolutely. Register to vote. We don't care who you vote for. We're a nonprofit, but we do want you to vote. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Right.